Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of the What Was Good podcast with Zach and Schuyler. In this episode, we'll be talking about the award winners from the great year of 1989. So stay tuned for our discussions of Oscar Award winner for Best Picture, Driving Miss Daisy, Grammy Award winner for Best Album of 1989, Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time, and the National Book Award winner for fiction, Spartina, by John Casey. Hope you enjoy the episode, and if you want to get in touch with us, reach out to us at whatwasgoodpod@gmail.com. Enjoy the show.
Hey, welcome in everybody. This is episode 2 of What Was Good, and today we're going to be talking about the award-winning movies, book, best album of 1989, and I think it's going to be kind of surprising, honestly. It's going to be a good discussion, I think, and we're going to have a lot to talk about. But there's other things to talk about first.
Well, I certainly have a lot to talk about, and not to preview what we're going to be talking about later, but it's June. My favorite baseball team, the Seattle Mariners, are like 9 games in first place in the AL West. I think the last time this happened was like 20 years ago. So I'm pretty
2001, pumped. I believe.
I think so, and I have the game on the TV in front of me on mute, so if you hear me interject with a groan or excitement, that's probably because of the game. But yeah, I haven't been this excited about baseball actually since last year. I'm trying to keep my excitement down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I do want to quote you from when we went to a game in 2022. No, it was 2021 we went to a game together, and you said, not this year, it's going to be 2023 when the Mariners win the World Series. They didn't even make the playoffs.
I misspoke.
Unfortunately.
I misspoke. It was supposed to be 2024.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it was a rounding error. That's what
I got
saying.
Confused. I was thinking about when the next election was going to be, and I was like, oh yeah, it's in just 2 years.
We didn't calculate in the leap year. That's what it was.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will continue my promise though that if the Mariners ever win the World Series, I'll get a tattoo to commemorate it. I don't have any tattoos, so.
Nor do I, and I honestly think I would join you in that nice little trident on the forearm or something.
Little? Oh no, I'm going like I'm going like the full back, like big old huge logo with the record and the box scores of each of the World Series games on one side, you know.
I love it. Yeah, the season record at top or somewhere in there. Yeah, you got to get it all.
So, I was at work today, right? I had to go into the office, and instead of working, I downloaded a bunch of stats from Baseball Reference because.
Love it.
So I think I mentioned this last time, but I've got a good friend who's a fan of the Phillies.
Yeah.
Good friend who's a fan of the Yankees. And so I did some research. They're all in first place right now. Mariners, Yankees, and Phillies. That hasn't happened outside of April since 2021. I mean, sorry, since 2001. It's been...
Okay, I was going to say 2021's not that impressive, but
yeah.
2001, that's... Yeah.
Yeah, since 2001, there have been 7 days total, all of them in April. So, like, that hardly even counts.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, season's just getting started.
Right, yeah. I mean, you could have played some crappy teams to start, and you win your first, 10 out of your first 13, and then the wheels fall off, like happened for the Mariners most years between, like, 2005 and 2017. So, we're all pretty happy this year, and I would love to see the Mariners beat the Yankees in the playoffs and then play the Phillies in the World Series.
Oh man, you wouldn't get any work done for like a month straight because you'd be at every game, wouldn't you?
Well,
okay, maybe not the Seattle games.
I'd have to take out a second mortgage, a home equity loan to do that. But I would be watching them all. I probably wouldn't get any work done. You're right about that.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm not entirely sure I believe in them yet because they play to their opponent's ability, it seems like. And when they played the White Sox, they beat them by one run a couple games. And that's not the sign of a great team. But they win. And so I can't complain. They're doing what they need to do.
I will say, if they never have to play the Royals again, I'll be happy.
Oh,
Man.
that series was painful, especially that first game. Just shudders thinking about it.
Well, outside of baseball, like the only thing that's been exciting in my life is I got a new washing machine.
Oh, wow. Is it quiet?
Well, yeah, it's quiet when it runs, but then when it finishes, it plays this really cute little song. It plays this really nice little ditty.
Wait, so this is like a dishwasher or like a washing?
Like a clothes washer, yeah.
Okay, because my dishwasher plays that little song every time it ends, so you must have got the same brand I did.
I got a LG.
I think that
I think
sounds
I can sing
right.
it for you. Here we go. Do 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 do, or something like that. It's pretty good.
That's the tune. Yep, we got that on our dishwasher. So
this is my first ever new dishwasher I've ever had in my life. Everything else has been a Craigslist special or
Nice.
a Curb Alert free. And you're like, it'll work for a couple of years.
A free like washing machine though on the curb. I don't know if I'd take that one.
Well, I mean, people in this area have a lot of money, so they throw out good stuff all the time. So
gotcha.
it's like, as long as it works,
Yeah.
you can make it last for a couple of years. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd probably, if I found one that was on the curb at my house or in my area, it'd probably have some kind of, I don't know, puppies in it or something, some kind of wild animal maybe. I don't know. It'd be not the ideal thing for sure. Well, should we get into this?
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of curbs and possibly falling off them, maybe we should dig into this 1989 part 2.
So after after watching or going through all the biggest money makers last time, this time looking at the awards movies, the ones that won the Oscar, the National Book Award, and Best Album, I see the difference. I see why some of these won awards. So I say some, not all of these. I don't think all of these things that we're going to be reviewing deserve the award they got, but the quality of each of these seems to be quite substantial, or so much better than just the top grossing ones. So I get it. That's my take after looking at everything as a whole between top grossing and award winners. So it'll be fun to kind of go through these movies today, especially, and talk about what we watched and why we think what we think.
Yeah, I should point out that we went a little overboard in this episode.
I like it, though.
Because we were just going to talk about the Best Picture award winner for 1989, and then I was like, well, what about the other 4 nominees? I'm going to just watch them too. And so I think we ended up we both ended up watching all 5 of the movies,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Well, we watched 7 movies between Clear and Present Danger, Batman, and then all 5 award nominees. That we're looking at 7 movies for 1989 that we watched.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think all 7 movies probably took less time to watch than it took to read Clear and Present Danger. But
Oh, by far. Yeah, but I'm glad we did that. I like this idea of kind of looking at all those movies and reviewing, saying, why did this one win and these others didn't, or what should have won. And that's what we're going to get at today after we kind of look at Driving Miss Daisy especially.
so is that where we're starting? Is that,
Yeah.
So tell us about Driving Miss Daisy.
So Driving Miss Daisy is the Best Picture award winner for 1989. Very controversially so between all the other movies and even one movie that wasn't even nominated. But it's kind of where Morgan Freeman got his start as Hoke, the driver for Miss Daisy in this movie. And the way I looked at this movie was kind of as a timepiece, like a look back into the past from 1989 as the kind of racial tension a little bit at the time when he started working with Miss Daisy and being her driver, and she was this rich white Jewish woman, and Hoke was her driver because she couldn't drive herself around anymore. She wasn't capable of doing those kind of things anymore. So that's essentially the premise of this movie, and I want to get into a lot of the details on it. I'm just not entirely sure what details there were.
Yeah, that's funny you should say that. So basically, the movie starts when Miss Daisy has a classic pedal confusion crash and thinks she's stepping on the brakes, steps on the gas, backs her car off of a ledge or a curb or somehow.
Pretty exciting stuff.
And her son, played by Dan Aykroyd in a...
Weirdly played by Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, apparently he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Which,
he was.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like a step out of his normal role, for sure. And I think that's kind of what he wanted. But, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it worked very well. But anyway, so he hires Hoke to be her driver. Miss Daisy refuses to have a driver because she can drive herself, or she can take the trolley or the bus or whatever. And eventually she accepts the driver, and it almost plays to me like a rom-com. Like, they have the classic meet cute where, they disagree and everything, but I actually really enjoyed the fact that it wasn't a romance. Ultimately,
no, not at all.
It was just a platonic friendship between the two, which I thought it was actually a huge relief, because I was thinking they were gonna fall in love and and I was like, you can't do that, and they didn't do that, and so I breathed a sigh.
Okay, my question here is then, was it really a friendship? Like, I felt like they never actually, maybe at the very end where we're at the end of their lives and whatnot, but I felt like there was never a friendship there, and it was just a business setting for them. That's kind of, even though Hoke was trying to make her as a friend, Miss Daisy wouldn't even allow that much.
Hold that thought for just a second. J.P. Crawford just hit a 2-run homer. Boom.
JP, my boy. I don't know. I never say that. I don't know why I just did.
Yeah. Cut that. I would say that I think they did become friends. Like, Miss Daisy is a very prim and proper older Jewish woman in the South, which is not easy. So we've got the racial tension, but also the ethnic tension. Like, there weren't a whole lot of Jewish people in the South. So I think she let herself build this friendship as much as she could accept. Like that was what a friendship looked like to her, I think.
Yeah, and she opened up as much as she knew how, I guess. Thinking about it from perspective of just being me, she never felt like she was treating Hoke the way I would treat a friend. But it's very, very different scenario. I'm sure, like, all the racial tension involved with everything between the Jewish and the civil rights and everything. It was just a tough friendship to start with.
So let's talk about the civil rights thing a little bit. So this is something that, overall, I'd say the movie was very, like, soft and had a nice warm glow to it. It was a very nostalgic look at the past. It kind of,
in a way, yeah.
It almost avoided almost all of the tension and stuff that was there. Like, Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated, right? That didn't show. That they just ignored that. JFK got assassinated. So this takes place from like 57 to 1972 or so.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of stuff happened in there, and I feel like they kind of just smoothed it over and had some easy to digest tension where the bad guys were clear. Like the only time you really see the racial tension is with the Alabama cops. Right? Like, that's the only time it's real explicit.
Well, there's also the scene where her temple is bombed.
Which you don't actually see
it. Yeah, it's just that it felt like that was like, oh yeah, there's also this tension going on too. Don't forget that the Jews were having some trouble during this time as well in the South, and it just felt like also, hey, there's something else going on. We don't really want to talk about it, but it's something these characters are having to deal with.
Right, like they elide all of the actual tension, which, if this is just a portrait of like a friendship, which it kind of is, but she's white and Jewish, he's black, and they're in the South. Like, you cannot have those characters as they are, and they're there for a reason. It's because of the situation they were in, and then they kind of just smooth it over and make it all kind of happy and like rose-colored glasses. It was my idea.
It felt like there was so much room to expand on all the issues that were happening during this time, like with both of them. And I don't know how Miss Daisy came into her money, because she made it very clear she was not always rich. And don't call her rich, because she grew up with nothing. And I don't know how she came into all the money that she came into, but there was so much more that could have been done. There was drama there waiting to be played out that just didn't play out.
Right, and that's exactly how I felt. And then to push back on myself, I thought, like, well, is that asking this movie to be something that it's not? Like,
but what was this movie?
It was a heartwarming friendship between older people from different walks of life. And maybe I'm asking too much of it to, like, oh, you really need to dig into these social tensions and stuff. Like, no, that's not what it was. That's not what it was. It was a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, I guess I am disappointed, because I feel like there's so much more that could be drawn out, but that's maybe not what they were trying to do.
And, I have to bring up one other movie here that we're not even going to discuss, that a lot of people... Like, I went back and read a bunch of stuff about 1989, and there was a lot of controversy about this winning Best Picture. But there was also controversy that Do the Right Thing wasn't even nominated. Spike Lee movie.
Oh, yeah.
That actually covered racial tension. But I was thinking about that more, and that movie is more based in the present of 1989, and it's harder to judge that as a cinematic feature than looking back and saying, oh yeah, here's what was back in the 50s and 60s, rather than, hey, this is what's going on right now, and trying to judge that as a movie in itself.
Yeah, I mean, things being set in the past might be a theme as we talk about these movies.
Just a little.
Yeah, I was looking that up too. And Do the Right Thing is the only of one of these 5 movies that's on the Sight and Sound, like, top 250 movies of all time list.
I didn't watch it myself.
And it didn't even get nominated, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't one of the top 5 nominations, yeah. But there was a lot of, I remember reading that there was a lot of controversy about Driving Miss Daisy winning, and how if you really wanted to have a movie about racial tension and racial differences, then Do the Right Thing should have been the one to go with there.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I saw Do the Right Thing, maybe 15 years or so, but even though Driving Miss Daisy kind of smooths over everything, it's still more didactic about it than Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing is a good movie, and it's the setting in New York City and dealing with all this conflict, but it's not like it spoon feeds you what you're supposed to think, whereas Driving Miss Daisy, as much as they deal with it, it kind of does, right?
Yeah. It shows you, it's kind of a background to what's actually happening in the movie. There's the social tensions are all just kind of just in the background, is something to consider.
Right. And I feel like I'm being too hard on it. Like, it's not great, I didn't think, but Morgan Freeman and Jessica Tandy, the 2 stars, are like firing on all cylinders. They are so good.
It's true. They were good. And this was like a big break for Morgan Freeman, wasn't it? This was his first real movie that he was in.
Which is funny to think that, like, he was playing an old guy right from the very beginning. That's just been his entire career.
I relate him a lot to, like, Steve Martin. They've been old forever, as long as I can remember.
Yeah. But I mean, their chemistry is great. Like, they play off each other really great. Like,
yeah.
Without them, the movie doesn't work at all. And with them, it's, like, I enjoyed it. I didn't love
was
it, but it was
pleasant.
like it's very pleasant, and it's not too tragic. There's one death in the movie that gets played for tears, but it ends just as sweetly as it begins, almost.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, they Jessica Tandy and Morgan Freeman were great. They played their roles perfectly. They played exactly what they were supposed to do. Dan Aykroyd,
Eh.
he didn't fit in this movie, and there were a few other bit players throughout, but yeah, and I think I'm going to rate this one a little harsher than you do, just because I don't know. I couldn't find too many redeeming facts other than I like Morgan Freeman. Jessica Tandy was fine, but man. So I'm going to give you my grade.
Okay, what do you got?
This is the harshest grade I've given anything yet. As an Oscar winner for Best Picture, I'm giving this a D.
Holy smokes! Yeah, I'm much higher than you on that, just because it was competently made. I think the acting, other than Aykroyd, was really top notch. I took it down from a B plus to a B, because we got to acknowledge the old black man helps a white lady learn about life trope. Like,
but did he help her learn? I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe.
Oh, absolutely. He helped her learn. Like, helped her learn how to deal with things, helped her see things from other people's perspective. I think that was it, but that's a pretty well-worn trope, even at this point in 1989, I think. But I actually really enjoyed it. I teared up at the right moments. I thought they did a good job, so I think your D is way off. I think you're Samsonite on that one.
I had it as a C originally. But then after watching the other nominations, I couldn't feel like I even justify that for this movie. It didn't do anything for me. Maybe I had different expectations of what the movie should have been, but I just felt like there wasn't enough to this movie to especially win the Academy Award, but let alone be a whole movie in itself. It didn't feel like there was enough there.
Okay, I agree that it didn't deserve to win the Academy Award. So let's talk about these other movies that we watched.
Oh, yes, please.
Well, let's start with the other one set in the late 50s, early 60s, with a nice soft focus, glowy look back on nostalgia, with Dead Poets Society.
Do you think this was okay? You say a soft glow to it, but yeah, to some extent, yes. But I think it was a much more powerful piece than Driving Miss Daisy. It showed. Well, first I got to say, Robin Williams, amazing in this movie. Just his role, I felt like he played it perfectly, and I know. Unlike the Dan Aykroyd character in Driving Miss Daisy, he's a comedian coming into a more serious role here. He pulled it off flawlessly, I felt like. And, of course, it's easy to say that now because everybody remembers Robin Williams as, looking back now, what he was. And he was a funny man, for sure. But this role, I felt like, was a perfect position for him. And he played it so well that I think that in itself brought this movie up quite a bit.
Yeah, just to note, Dead Poets Society is the only of the 5 nominees from 1989 that's on the Letterboxd Top 250.
Okay.
It's quite a ways down from Do the Right Thing. Like we said, didn't get nominated at all, but Dead Poets Society is the only other one that's on there.
Yeah, and I mean, rightly so. I have talked to a couple people about 1989 movies, and one of them said this should have been the Academy Award winner, Dead Poets Society. In general, the story here is that these boys are at a boarding school, and they bring in a new English teacher to they needed a new English teacher, and so they brought in this Robin Williams to be their English teacher, and very set curriculum, but Robin Williams steps outside of that, or Keating, I guess it is in the movie. That's his character's name. He steps outside of that and tries to help them be free thinkers and do things for themselves instead of just jumping through all the hoops that school and life sets up for them. And with that being the case, although it wasn't his idea, although it wasn't Roger or Keating's idea, they go and start this society. They restart this society that Robin Williams' character kind of had when he was at the school 20 years prior. And they go out and do free thinking things, reading poetry to each other, and just being generally outside the box from what their school expects of them. And then the story plays out with, well, I don't want to. I don't know. Can we give? We can give spoilers.
This is 35-year-old movies. I was just going to note that if you're not expecting spoilers, then turn it off because come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
So yeah, the the story plays out like main character. The boy who's the main character in the movie, his parents don't want him doing any of this stuff. They don't want him being an actor, which he got the lead role in Macbeth, I believe, was the play that he was playing in.
Midsummer Night's Dream. And Puck is only marginally the lead role. I'd say the lead role is one of the four lovers. But hey, what do I know?
We're not getting into Shakespeare on this one. But yeah, so he gets the lead role in this Shakespeare play, and his dad finds out and doesn't want him in it. Says he's going to pull him from the school and send him to a military camp instead, or military school instead. And essentially the movie ends with him, the boy, committing suicide, and what plays out from there with Keating getting fired because the parents felt like, and the staff of the school felt like the Robin Williams character was responsible for him becoming a free thinker and ending up killing himself in the movie. But it was a powerful movie, I felt like.
Do you think they were wrong?
In what way? What do you mean?
I mean,
who was wrong?
Do you think the administration and the other parents were wrong? I mean, like, Keating did encourage him to do these things despite his parents' wishes. Now, this gets really complicated, right? But what this is what I really didn't like about the movie. So I liked it. I think it's better than Driving Miss Daisy. I enjoyed it more.
Yes.
There is a reading of it that's not totally unreasonable that valorizes that suicide. That you can read it as this was the right thing to do rather than just pushing through and dealing with it. Nobody's life is perfect, right? Yeah, and his parents, what was his name? Neil? Like, his parents were rough, and like he just wanted to do his thing, but you know what? He was imminently going to be able to do his own thing. And the way that they almost glamorize the suicide really rubbed me the wrong way.
I love the movie, and I can't remember if I've actually seen this movie before. I loved the movie up until that point. I felt like the story was fun. The characters developed well, and they worked together well, but that didn't make sense for me. Like, it felt like a weak escape from what was actually going on in the movie. And even from Neil's character, I felt like that wouldn't have been what Neil did. He was a fun, light character, throwing desk sets off the balcony just to see if it'll fly, and doing all sorts of crazy stuff that was just fun. He wouldn't have killed himself. That's the take I had.
Yeah. I think I watched this in Mrs. Brown's English class, 11th grade.
I might have as well.
I think that's the last time I watched it, so we're talking some large number of years ago. About 5 minutes in, I'm like, the only thing I remember is that one of these dudes kills themselves. And then Neil shows up, and then Red Foreman shows up as his dad. I'm like, yep, it's that guy, isn't it? And sure enough, yeah. So, like, if you haven't seen it, and now you know somebody, one of the students dies. Well, we already said his name. It's Neil, but you'll know as soon as the characters are introduced who it's going to be. Yeah. So that was the one thing. One thing that I really loved about this movie was how all of the Welton Academy boys. Shout out to Welton. That's my wife's maiden name. So that was fun to watch. But how all they're like, these reasonable, congenial, smart kids. and the movie portrays the public school boys as like these mouth-breathing troglodytes. Like, it's just so funny. Like, there's definitely classism at play, both in the plot itself and like the guys that were making the movie. Like, they are stupid caveman style guys that are like, oh, football player, I'm gonna beat you up. I just love that part. It was so funny to me. Yeah. But so I gave this is a B+ for me. It's definitely better than Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah, and let's see. That I gave. Okay, so I was just above you. I actually gave it an A- here because thinking back, maybe B+ is more accurate just because I felt like the ending was weak, and I do agree that Robin Williams' character was partially responsible for this, but there was going to be some confrontation there with Neil and his parents anyway that inevitably would have happened. So I guess Keating or Robin Williams' character kind of pushed that maybe sooner than it would have happened normally. But yeah, good movie, great movie, but weak ending. I felt like they took the easy way out that didn't need to happen.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So I want to talk about my favorite.
Yes, do it.
Maybe my favorite movie of all time.
Fair enough.
I love Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams was one of the nominees. The only of the 5 that takes place in the modern day, though it may as well not have, since it's about baseball, and nothing is more nostalgic than baseball. In fact, the entire point of Field of Dreams is all about nostalgia for the past. But there's just something about it that I love. I don't think it's the best. In fact, when we get to like my ranking for how I would put them, how I think they should have gone in the Academy Awards, it's not the top. But I love the movie. When I watched it, so I have owned it on DVD for a long time, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to buy it. I like that movie. I'm going to buy it on 4K UHD Blu-ray, right?
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And it looked spectacular on my TV, and I watched it, and as soon as it finished, I started it over and watched it again. Because it's hard for me to say exactly what it is that I love about it so much, but it just hits exactly right because I love baseball. And it just hits that perfect tie of baseball to the past and like how you deal with your life, and it also like it moves at the same pace as life baseball does, and so it really gets that perfect match, I think, of vibes between the topic and the movie itself.
That's fair. I like this movie. One of the thoughts I had was, would this movie be so good if you watched it in, say, November, December, January, when there's not baseball going on? Do you think, I don't know, does that play into it?
That's a good question, and I might have to try this year because it probably does, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love the story. It's so much fun to like rehash and feel nostalgic for what you love. That's a lot of fun. And I mean, well acted as well. I love James Earl Jones. His just, I could just listen to him talk for days and days, and that would be enough entertainment for me. And I will say I'm still not entirely sure what his character brought to this movie, but like I said, I could just listen to him for a very long time about talking about anything really, and so that I wasn't complaining that he was there. I'm just not entirely sure the necessity of his character in this movie.
Well, it got them to Fenway Park. And if you're going to do a baseball movie about nostalgia, it has to have Fenway Park, right?
Yeah, or well, I guess you can't do Yankee Stadium anymore because it's a new Yankee Stadium.
You can't do Ebbets Field because they tore it down. They talked about that in the movie. His dad was a fan of the Dodgers before they moved to L.A. So, I mean, I think that was a lot to do with it. And also, maybe to show that he wasn't crazy. He wasn't the only one to hear the voices.
Okay. Well, he already knew he wasn't because his wife and kid could, right?
Yeah, but family dynamics can be kind of weird. You can get some like folie à deux or trois things where everybody just reinforces each other's crazy beliefs. So this was like an external validation of all that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I definitely don't like this movie as much as you, and it had been a while since I had seen this movie. So I went into it with a kind of reviewer mindset. Not okay. This is not so much a watching this to enjoy, but kind of just watch it to figure out what's going on and why, or what the story is. And oh man, you're gonna hate this, I bet, but it felt too mystical for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so well, okay, so you agree there, but it's a fun story. It's definitely nostalgia, but it felt too magical and mystical with all the voices whispering to him what he needs to do, or like being very vague about what he should do. And I mean, he does it well. It's good. It's good. I liked it way better than Driving Miss Daisy for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the mysticalness of it. Have you ever read the Michael Chabon book, Summerland?
I have not.
Oh, well, no. If you didn't like this movie that much, maybe I don't recommend it. But it's another like
no,
mystical.
I like the movie.
Another mystical baseball thing, and so maybe those just go really well together for me. One thing that, I don't want to talk too much about this. Yeah, I love the movie, wonderful movie. But one of the things I really love about it is like, it's not the only movie that does this, but I feel like it does a really good job of helping you feel like it's about an impossible dream, right? It's about being able to have a do-over of the past and what that could be like. And this is something like anybody that has any kind of regret. So if you've lived a life, you have this dream like, oh, if only I could go back in time and get a chance to say that thing or to talk to this person again. And, in this case, his dad died years ago. And so that lovely mysticalness of getting that chance to do that just really lands for me.
So what you're saying is this was the Uncle Rico moment from Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah.
Do you ever wish you could go back?
Yeah, exactly. Only they play it like with just enough sincerity and not too much irony, like that it balances perfectly. And you're like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
like,
and it's
like I don't have a fraught relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
He's still alive. I talked to him just the other day on Father's Day. We get along. Nothing stressful. But so it's not like there's this father-son thing that really hits with me. It's just this dream of being able to get one more chance that I think the movie plays perfectly, and I love it.
There was a little manufactured drama there with you're gonna lose your house. It's gonna.
Yeah.
I felt like that wasn't necessary to the story of the movie, but it was the threat that, oh no, you made a mistake of putting in this field, tearing out your crops and putting in a baseball field instead. So, now you're gonna lose everything. But it added to it a little bit, but not entirely necessary.
But I don't know if I had to do that, but I did love the reveal for when Karen falls off the bleachers and like
that was cool.
He's choking on the hot dog, and that's when the baseball players are revealed to his brother-in-law, who's trying to get him to sell the house because Doc walks off and helps Karen, even though he knows he can't go back. That part really got to me.
Okay. Oh, that actually, one thing about that bothered me, because previously when he was talking with Doc in the past, was it? Yeah, because he somehow went back in time.
Yeah, he went back to like 1972.
Yeah, and was talking to Doc, and how Doc talked about his dream was getting that one hit. He didn't get the hit. He had a sacrifice fly that scored a run. That bothered me a little bit.
We're going to ignore that. I noticed that too and just was like, okay, let's move on.
but
speaking of moving on, I feel like I don't want to keep talking about I could talk about this movie all night, but there's two more nominees that we need to get to.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about Born on the 4th of July then.
Oh, yeah. Let's go.
Oh, man. Okay, so I didn't watch this movie till last night, and so I was kind of putting it off, and I haven't thought so much about a movie the next day as I have this one. This one made me like stop and think and consider history and what this movie portrayed. So the story here is that this is Ron Kovic, kind of a historical fiction here. It's his story.
Wait, is this a real dude?
Yeah, he's 77 years old right now.
Oh shit! I thought it was just a totally fictional thing. Okay.
No. And I read after they finished filming this, he actually gave his Purple Heart to Tom Cruise because he thought he did such a good job of portraying him in the movie. So
okay, I'm not gonna argue with that. I love Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan in general. Like, he does a lot of action movies, and action movies are fun, but they're not something I go out of my way to watch. But this role for him, he played it, I hate to use the word masterfully, but he did such a good job, and he was nominated for Best Actor for this role, didn't win it. He's never won Best Actor. That's crazy to me.
I don't think he deserved to win this one, because we'll get to that in a few minutes.
True. Okay, fair enough. But he played this role really well, and the story is, it's Ron Kovic's story. Teenager growing up in New York, or Massapequa. Is that New Jersey or New York?
I don't know.
Nah, nobody knows. So growing up, finishes high school, or assuming he finishes high school, didn't ever actually show or not, but then joining the Marines, and with the intent of being excited to go to Vietnam, to fight the Viet Cong in Vietnam. And then it's his story from getting nearly blown to death over there, like bullet through him, essentially, like through his shoulder and everything, and actual life-threatening danger or injury. And then the story covers his recovery and his transition from being pro-war to anti-war, and how he became eventually a anti-war speaker and just totally against everything like to do with Vietnam. So the story itself is a real story that happened in our own history just not that long ago, if you think about it. But for me, it really made me stop and think about how the Vietnam veterans were perceived coming home. And I can't even fathom how you go off to this war with all good intentions, saying, I'm serving my country, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm helping in any possible way I can, and then to come home and be completely vilified. And just, it was painful. It was so hard, but it was the truth. It was what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough thing, because the Ron Kovic,
yeah,
volunteered, right? A lot of these boys that went over there and got killed and maimed and came back didn't volunteer.
Yeah,
they were drafted. So it was an incredibly complicated thing, and I think the movie did a great job of dealing with the complications. And that's one thing that I really appreciated about it, is like all the other movies that were set in the past that were nominated this year, like most of them we talked about, kind of gloss over the worst of it. And this one is like, no, we're just going to look straight at it.
And it being his story made it feel like, this is literally what he went through. And I mean, you were looking at blood and guts, you were looking at dying babies, you were looking at rat infested hospitals.
Yeah, the camera does not look away from the horror. And that was the other thing I loved about it, is like, this is a film, capital F film. The other four, I think, are movies. The other four nominees are movies. This is a film. Like, Oliver Stone he goes hard and brings out all the techniques. And like, I was on board from, I really like this movie, but I think I was on board from like the 10th minute or so, where they're showing high school wrestling practice, and the coach is
Yeah.
like, if you want to do this, you gotta sacrifice, and then it cuts to a shot of a crucifix in the Kovich home, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yep, I'm on board. And so that is something that I also want to mention, is like the way that they bring in like the Catholic faith and both the guilt and like the altruism of it. I thought they did a really good job.
Yeah, and it felt like everything played perfectly in this. His mom being the ultra Catholic woman, and how she was dealing with what he was going through and just unable to accept it. But for me, the biggest difference, and this is something that stewed overnight for me, was these kids were looking at the World War II veterans coming back as heroes. They came back, had parades for them. Everybody was celebrated. We did the world a favor. It was amazing. And then he joins the Marines, assuming he's doing the right thing. Everybody's going to celebrate him when he comes back. Not at all. Can you imagine the difference of feeling coming back as a veteran of Vietnam compared to World War II?
Yeah.
It's night and day. And that was what really got to me was, man, these people came back after doing what they were told was the right thing to do, and then they're just treated like garbage by not even just the people that are anti-war, but their own government, their own people.
Yep.
It was hard. It was hard to watch at times.
Yeah, agreed. So it sounds like you like this one quite a bit.
I really liked this movie. Yeah, I personally gave it a minus.
I'm actually right with you. I'd ring the bell of agreement if we had one. I'm an A- too. This is not to spoil things, but this is the one that I think should have won.
I'm not going to disagree with you either.
So that brings us to our last nominee, which was a little movie called My Left Foot. So, like, way smaller box office performance than this, but has like a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's essentially it's the story of the Irish painter Christy Brown, painter and writer, who was born with cerebral palsy and learned how to basically do everything with his left foot, the only part of his body that he could control with any reasonable amount of accuracy. And it's essentially just a showcase for Daniel Day-Lewis to play adult Christy Brown. And so historically, you've got able-bodied actors playing disabled people. That's just fraught with all kinds of opportunities for like exploitation and stuff, but damn, does he nail it.
He does.
Like, Daniel Day-Lewis he makes the movie. Without him, the movie is, just a plain old run-of-the-mill biopic of some inspirational figure, like The Miracle Worker. We all watched that, right, with Helen Keller and all that.
Yeah,
it's fine. You're like, yeah, good for you, good job. But Daniel Day-Lewis, and honestly, the kid actor that plays Christy Brown,
he did really well too.
Was also fantastic. Like, it gives me a little bit of pause to be like, oh yeah, these guys did so great at playing a disabled person, but they did, right?
That's a hard role to accomplish, to limit yourself to only being able to move one portion of your body. I feel like that takes more acting skill than to play a able-bodied person in a lot of movies.
Right, yeah, it does. And like the vocalizing and the way he talks, like, it makes you feel like you're really watching this character as opposed to just watching a relatively cheap biopic. And even as far as biopics go, it was pretty good. Like, it hits the right notes with his mother and his father and like the family drama. It does a really good job. Like, I enjoyed it quite a bit, but it didn't thrill me or excite me in the same way that, say, Field of Dreams and Born on the 4th of July did. I really did like the framing device of it's starting in the future, and then his future wife
yeah.
is in the room with him reading the chapters of his life as it goes through. So I thought that was a pretty clever way to do it.
Yeah.
Because he actually did write that book, right? He did write
It's
his
crazy. He became a
did write
novelist
the own
too
book.
after that. Yeah, he did all his own painting, and then wrote his own novels, which is insane. Only having a left foot to do all of this with.
Yeah, I get frustrated about how slowly I type with two hands, and he's like pecking out letters on a typewriter one by one with his foot, and like it really is kind of like, it makes you think about how incredible the human mind is to be plastic enough to just adjust to that's life.
And that brings me to one of my favorite scenes is where he first writes the word mother with his foot, and his dad takes him to the bar and tells everybody, "This is my son, the genius." I really like the dad a lot. Like, you could tell a lot of his internal struggle there, being Catholic, and just the ideas that went along with that. And I liked the movie. It was good. It was a fun story.
Yeah, I liked it too, and like the dad character was really good. So with his mom, actually, she won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress.
Yes, she did.
But I think the dad character was great because he did a great job of showing that mix of like because this also takes place in the 50s, I think, mostly.
Yeah, I believe so.
The 40s and 50s. That like repression of what you have to do, what a dad is, as the head of the household, the stern father figure, but also like he really loved his 21 kids or whatever, 13 of them that lived or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was balanced really well. One other thing so I watched this like back to back with Born on the 4th of July, right? Both of which feature able-bodied actors playing disabled people. And one of the things that kept jumping out at me is how hard the world used to be for people in wheelchairs.
Oh,
like, I don't think about it much, but the Americans with Disabilities Act has like revolutionized like life. Like you see these shots of them trying to go up a curb.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. And go ahead.
I was going to say, not only just for people in wheelchairs, but like it's one of those things that I really appreciate because I used to push around strollers a lot. And these curb cuts that are there make strollers easier. Like, it's just one of these great things that I think we've done in the U.S. as opposed to a lot of other countries where we've made things accessible more accessible, clearly.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of difficulties, but like it was something that kept jumping out at me with how hard it is.
Yeah, life was not easy. Especially, I like the scene where, going back to Born on the 4th of July, where he and Charlie get stranded on the beach because they fall out of their wheelchairs and roll down in the sand. So,
okay, I hated the whole Charlie section. I thought it was like totally unnecessary, but I did love that scene.
Well, okay, I kind of agree that it was unnecessary to the extent that it didn't really move the story forward at all. But that's actually what, like, knowing that this is a kind of a biopic, this played a major role in his life, and so that was a big part for him.
Yeah, so now knowing that it's a biopic, you could tell I didn't do a whole lot of research. That probably changes it for me, but I wasn't watching him like, why are we doing this thing in Mexico with Willem Dafoe and all these like Mexican prostitutes? Like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, that it did seem a little gratuitous, but it was how it fit the movie once you kind of know that's what his life was.
I get it. I get it.
All right. So what did you have? Okay, so let's go from bottom to top here. Let's go your least favorite up to what you think should have won, and I'll do mine as well. We'll kind of go the same.
Well, those are two different lists.
Okay. So
there's my favorites, and there's what I think should have actually won.
Fair. So let's do
with what we think should have actually won. I'll start. My bottom one is Driving Miss Daisy of the 5.
That's where I'm at as well. I felt like it was the weakest of all 5 of those. Yeah. For me, the next one up would have been My Left Foot. Great movie, but I just felt like there was too much the other ones were just better.
Okay, yeah, my fourth in terms of what I think should have actually won was actually Field of Dreams.
Okay, fair.
It's number one on my favorites, but I think
Yeah.
it was the fourth best one.
And I think we're going to kind of see something like that when we review the music here in just a minute, too.
Yeah,
for myself, at least.
Third best, so what I think was the third best was Dead Poets Society. They're like
Okay.
right in the middle, like perfectly acceptable. Like, it was a good movie.
Yeah, and third is where I have Field of Dreams. I felt like it was just a little bit stronger than My Left Foot and played to the nostalgia real well. So, got a little variation here, which is good. But then second on my list, of course, then has to be Dead Poets Society. I felt like it was a good movie. It just outclassed a little bit.
Yeah, for number two, mine was My Left Foot. I think like the Daniel Day-Lewis performance just puts it over the top. Like,
Fair enough.
it elevates it so much that it gets up to number two. And then I think it looks like we're agreeing on number one.
Yes.
So I think Born on the 4th of July was the best film that was nominated of 1989.
Yes. Yeah, and of course we like last episode we talked a little bit about some of the other movies that came out in '89 as well. But I felt like of those 5 nominated, Born on the 4th of July, and I almost skipped watching it. I was sitting at home last night. I was like, no, I need to watch this movie, and I am so glad I did because it definitely was the best of the 5 nominations. It told a story that was powerful and got me thinking a lot about everything.
Yeah, the film that wasn't nominated that I think should have won was UHF.
I'm going to go with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure on that one.
Now, I did do some extra research and say that Driving Miss Daisy was actually the biggest box office hit of those.
Of those 5, really?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, slightly ahead of Dead Poets Society. It was the only one to clear the 100 million mark.
Interesting.
I mean, most of that was in 1990 because it came out like right at Christmas time, 1989.
Yeah.
To get in there for the Oscar rush. But yeah, it was the biggest moneymaker, biggest award winner.
Okay, I guess. Just we don't agree with it in 2024.
Well, I think a lot of people didn't agree with it at the time, too.
That's true. That's very true.
It is also the lowest rated on Letterboxd and Rotten Tomatoes.
Ooh.
Or tied for lowest on Rotten Tomatoes.
It makes you wonder what the Academy saw in it that they felt like it was the best picture that year. Oh, well.
It was a sweet, touching portrait of the past in a feel-good way, as opposed to Born on the 4th of July, which was a unsweet, untouching, brutal view of the past.
Which, looking at it now, makes more sense to me. But, all right. Shall we move on and talk about our music album, our best album of the year?
Yeah, the Grammy Award for Best Album that year went to Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time.
Certainly did.
Now, I gotta admit, I didn't really know much Bonnie Raitt. Like, the only Bonnie Raitt song I knew prior to listening to this was her duet with Tom Petty, Let's Give Him Something to Talk About.
Okay,
I mean, I
fair
know
enough.
the name. I know the name Bonnie Raitt, classic, whatever, but
Yeah.
this is the first time for me listening to this album. I think it's the first time I've heard any of these songs to my memory.
Really? Okay.
And-
go ahead.
I gotta say, like, I really liked it. I thought it was a killer album.
Okay. So, and we can't. Okay. At least we disagreed on some stuff today. I
Yeah,
don't
I
disagree
can't believe
with you here, though.
I can't believe you gave Driving Miss Daisy a D.
Well, we can review that another time. We can come back and talk about that later. But I
All right.
am 100% on board with you here. This is a good album. And after our last episode where we talked about Bobby Brown's, what was the name of the album?
Don't Be
Don't
Cruel.
Be Cruel. Yeah. And I like that album. This was such a departure from that.
Oh, yeah.
It was completely different. You could hear so many influences in Bonnie Raitt's music. Like, I felt like at times I was listening to 70s country rock almost. You could hear that in her music. You could hear a lot of different unique things in there that made it so appealing.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, like, the first time I was listening to it, the first 3 tracks, just like one after the other. That's as good of an album opening as I think I've heard.
Yeah.
Like those three in a row. Like the first song, Nick of Time, the title song, was incredible. It opens up with this, like, the very first song just punches you right in the gut. She starts talking about her parents, getting older, and they're getting older too, and we're running out of time. And like, here I am in my mid-40s. And I'm like, I feel that, Bonnie Raitt. I feel that.
And I think that was that theme is there throughout. Like, this is not a cute, soft album. This is like a gritty middle-age album. And you can feel that throughout all the songs, that this is like, okay, I've been there, I've done that. I'm not going to beat around the bush with what I want. These songs are telling you what I want, how I feel exactly. Let's not pretend anymore. This is it.
Yeah, it's like a very adult relationship album.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, it's like a grown-up Taylor Swift.
I mean, that's one way to, like...
like some breakup songs,
that,
some stress songs. So, I mean, Taylor Swift is only in her 30s. Maybe in another 10 years, she'll be making an album like Nick of Time.
And, Bonnie Raitt is still touring. She's 74, and she's still touring. She has something like 27 albums now. This was her 12th album.
Wow, I've got like a huge backlog to go through then. Damn.
I guess so. Yeah, and so to think about, no wonder this is more like a gritty, middle-aged album, is because she had been making music for 15, 20 years already at this point, and this was also her first Grammy nomination even. Not even like win, this was her first nomination on her 12th album.
So is this like a comeback album? Was she popular and successful before, or?
No, so she was never huge before, but she, from what I could tell, she had some issues with prior producers and whatnot, and then she kind of had some albums that she didn't really have any coverage for, or like she didn't get anything out there for them really. And then with this one, she signed with a new producer and a new everything, and it worked out for her.
Yeah, it sure did. Like I think you mentioned, such a great blend of like rock and country. And then we got like my first listen. I loved my first listen. You get to the very last song, "The Road Is My Middle Name," and it's just this barn burner of a classic blues song. I'm like, oh man, so the first three, like I said, were awesome. There were some in the middle that like you lose steam a little bit, but then to close with just straight up blues rock was like, okay, yep, I'm in. This is it.
Yeah. And so one of my notes was that I think the best song on the album actually was "I Will Not Be Denied." I felt like that one was just the most powerful of all of these kind of gritty songs. It wasn't my favorite song, but it was the best one. The one that really got me, that I felt was my favorite song, was "Nobody's Girl." And that might be a kind of interesting take, because it's a song about essentially a beautiful woman who doesn't feel comfortable in her own skin, essentially. And I felt like it was a good song. It was my favorite, not the best song on the album, though.
Yeah, I get that. Like that was a good one, and it's a really interesting if you start to go into like the gender politics of stuff, right? Ooh. Like in that middle, you've got that one, but you've got a series of two in a row. The first is "Cry on My Shoulder," which is like a really tender love song, basically.
It is
a very like mature relationship love song. And then the next one is "I Need a Real Man," which on the surface level seems like so regressive. Like, I don't want no pansy. Whereas you're just talking about this guy she's in love with crying on her shoulder, and then like, I want a real man. Just like, I love that juxtaposition of those two, because everybody is like more than one thing. And so I just thought the whole thing was like really well structured and well done.
Yeah, the placement of the album, like even the order of the songs on the album is just amazing. Just you don't always think about that, but one song playing into the next one, essentially. It works so well, and it's mixed well. The very little I know about mixing albums or anything, they all sound great, and there's a lot of different instruments incorporated into it, a lot of different sounds that all work, I think.
Yeah, and originally, like after listening to this a couple of times, I was like, "Oh, this is a solid A." I had to bump it down.
Oh, you did?
I did. Well, so because an A is as high as it gets, right? Or are we doing A pluses?
I assume we're going to have some A pluses along the way. I know there's going to be some movies or songs or albums that are just like, this is so far above anything else that we got to give it an A plus. I feel like.
So I was at an A, and then I read the other 4 nominees for Best Album in 1989. I was like, oh crap, it's not as good as some of those. I got to bump it down to an A minus.
Okay, so I didn't look at that list. So I don't know who else is on there, but I have this as an A right now, and that I'm not saying that's the right grade. There might have been better music in 1989. I don't know, but just as an album for me, this worked. It was good, really good.
Agreed. So the reason I bumped it down, well, the other nominees were Don Henley for The End of Innocence. I don't know about that one. I don't care. But there was Tom Petty with Full Moon Fever.
Okay.
That's an A. That album's an A. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It is. This is Nick of Time is a great album. Full Moon Fever's better. Then there was the Fine Young Cannibals, The Raw and the Cooked. No, it's fine. It's pretty good. They got some good songs. But the best album of 1989, and the other nominee, was the Traveling Wilburys, Volume 1.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if you're familiar with the Traveling Wilburys.
Yes, to some extent, yeah.
The greatest assemblage of pop music power in history.
Okay.
Tom Petty.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
Roy Orbison, George Harrison, Bob Dylan. Like, talk about a supergroup.
Yeah.
And that album, Volume 1, is all killer, no filler. Like, every song on that is so good. I can't believe it didn't win. Although, like, I'm not, like, mad that Bonnie Raitt won, because it is a fantastic album, but
yeah,
the Traveling Wilburys Volume 1 is just absolutely an incredible album and near and dear to my heart.
Okay, so yeah, and so, I think we might have a harder, like, I'm glad we're not going to try to go through every top album or every nominated album, because I think that would be so much harder than what we're trying to do with the movies.
I agree, yeah. Because, like, in order to be fair, you got to listen to each one, 4 or 5 times, right?
Oh, at least. I would listen to this Bonnie Raitt album straight through at least 10 times.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I highly recommend Traveling Wilburys Volume 1.
If I have time between everything else that we're doing for this podcast, I'll mix that in there.
Well, just turn it on when you're walking around the park like you were today.
Fair enough, yeah. I was, yeah. Geocaching.
So anyway, I think 1989 was a pretty great year, other than Don Henley.
Yeah, sounds like it. Even the Bobby Brown album that we reviewed last time, great album. Not to the extent that any of these ones we just mentioned are, but...
Well, it does kind of give you an insight into the difference between the populace and the people that vote for the Grammys. Yeah. Like, people that listen to music on the radio don't want to hear about middle-aged relationship problems. But the people in the Grammy Academy or whatever they call it tend to skew older, and so, like,
yep,
very much up in their wheelhouse, and I get it. And that's exactly where my wheelhouse is right now, so I'm all on board.
Yep, I'm right there with you on that. All right, so shall we talk about the National Book Award winner for 1989?
Let's.
Okay, the name of the book was Spartina. I had never heard of this before.
Has this one been made into a movie?
No, it has not. It's even hard to find the book. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd make this into a movie.
I'm not sure what would happen in the movie. It works as a book. I'm just going to start off by saying that I really like this book. Well, okay, I like the first 300 pages of this book.
Yeah. Okay, keep going. I'll let you talk.
Okay, so the story is cranky old man. His life's not going great. He's trying to build a boat.
Old. Pause here.
Okay,
He's 42.
okay, old.
He's 42.
Oh man. Okay, I can't use the word old then. So this man in New England, he's in Rhode Island, I believe it is, and he's working on building a boat so that he can get out on the ocean himself instead of working for other people. He's a crab and lobster fisherman, and it's the story of essentially just a year or two of his life. It's a story of his life. It's not so much a story of his boat or anything like that. It's what he deals with and all of his emotions that go into it. And this was one of the most recent books that I've read that I felt like I actually understood what the main character was going through and how he actually felt about things. I feel like that's really hard to do in a book sometimes, but John Casey, is that the author?
Yeah, John Casey.
Yeah, I felt like he did a really good job of portraying those emotions and giving a picture of what Dick Pierce actually was a lot like.
Yeah, so while I was reading this, I was thinking a lot about the book we just discussed on our last episode, Clear and Present Danger, where essentially no one has an internal life.
Yes.
It's just a series of events that happen, and this one, occasionally events happen, and it was almost entirely about Dick's internal life.
Yeah,
so it's
that's very true.
such a departure. Like, I mean, this one was very, very literary fiction. This is like when you think about, what's going to win a National Book Award for fiction, it's this type of book, right?
Absolutely,
like,
yeah.
It's not a thriller. It's not a mystery. It's not a romance. It's very much about the internal life of Dick Pierce, which is funny because you also think of it like a National Book Award winner as being this like high flowing prose and stuff, and this one was like incredibly simply written. Like I have written down in my notes, it's a mix of like the Dick and Jane books and Hemingway, like these short, perfunctory, masculine sentences, I'll call it. Like,
okay, that's quite the description you have there. Yeah, it was really easy to read. It was, I mean, it didn't take me long at all to get through it because you just sit down and read through 60, 70 pages pretty quickly, and it kept me engaged throughout. It was enjoyable. There was some stuff that didn't need to be there. I read some reviews about this, and a lot of people are upset about his affair that he was having. But I felt like that was essential to this story. I felt like that was a huge part of him kind of growing and understanding himself, was that affair. And while he didn't seem like the type that would have done that necessarily, I think it did kind of paint or open his eyes a little bit to things that are outside of what he normally would experience.
Huh. That's funny because I also think that part with Elsie, the park ranger or Natural Resources Department ranger, and his affair with her and her subsequent pregnancy were vital to the story, but in a totally different way. Like,
interesting.
I thought that it was necessary to really flesh out the central metaphor of like what I saw of the book with the title, like the Spartina grass is this native grass that grows in the salt water, and the metaphor of that with the locals, as you call them. They're not natives, right? But they're people that are families that have been there for a long time that are just surviving there in this area, and in a way being used as a natural resource by the money rich people.
Very true.
Yes, they're like treated sort of human, but also just they're like Elsie basically uses him to get pregnant.
Yeah,
right?
that's
like she
what
engages with him and they have a relationship, but that's why. And so it's like this presence of these locals that are there for the support of the rich people that have moved in. Like that's like the rich people think that that's why they exist. You know, oh yeah, you can come cook my lobster bake or thing at the party, like sort of treating them like equals, but everybody knows that they're not.
Yeah.
And so just their presence there is the important thing. As long as they're there, then everybody can still sort of function.
And I don't want to say class warfare.
I do.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to, but I do kind of think that's what it is. It was definitely a story of different classes, and Dick being the low class, just everyday worker and struggling to get by, compared to, what was the old lady's name that ended up loaning him money?
Miss Perry.
Miss Perry, yeah, or Captain Tashira, who was owned all the big boats that went out lobstering. Just the difference between Dick's life and what is perceived to be, like, you don't know everything that's going on with all the rich people, but just how much easier their life is using these low or lesser people they kind of see. And I if there's one character I wanted to know more about, it would be Miss Perry, just because she's kind of used as an outlet for Dick's family. In a weird way, she's providing for them because she feels obligated to, but Dick doesn't really even know she's providing for them. She's buying his kids books that have massive value.
Yeah, and, right. Actually, I've written in my notes noblesse oblige with regards to Miss Perry.
Okay, explain that to me.
That idea of condescension in the best way. Like that obligation that the rich have to care for the poor. And so maybe I don't want to say class warfare, but like I thought Casey did a really good job of delineating the different classes. You've got the swamp folk.
Yes.
Like the Pierces. You've got
Eddie.
The rich folks like Eddie's another one. You've got the rich folk like Miss Perry, who are more than any other of the other rich people, like actually part of the community.
Yeah.
You've got the other rich folk like Elsie, who are trying their damnedest to be one of the locals, but they just can't. They don't have this. Their lives are just different. And then you've got the strivers like Marie and Schuyler.
Yeah.
Which, like, I just thought he did a really good job of framing out all the different types of people. And the only one that seemed to be fighting a war was Dick.
Yeah, and it was mostly with himself.
Yes.
Without having to rely on anybody else or anything else. He wanted to do it himself.
Yeah, I'll say that Dick is aptly named.
Yeah, although, come on, you could have picked a different last name, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, so this is another thing that I had written in my notes. Like, this was 1989, right? And I feel like this sort of like modern but old, past-looking masculinity was really a big thing. Like, people were moving to rich people were moving to Montana to reconnect with like their lost masculinity, and like you've got these guys like trying to keep alive a dying way of life that's been made irrelevant by modern technology. Yeah. So this was like, I feel like this sort of crisis of masculinity was in the zeitgeist at the time. I mean, it still is, but in a different way. And so naming your character Dick Pierce is like right in line with that. Very like struggling with what it means to be a man with a traditional work skills in this kind of changing environment. I thought they did a good job of doing that, if a little bit on the nose at points.
I agree. One problem I did have with the book was it felt like at some points it was making Dick seem deeper and more philosophical than I felt like he actually was. Like some of his like you said, this is mostly internal monologue with Dick throughout the whole thing, but some of it, the descriptions that were used for like his internal thoughts, I felt like that's not what this Dick or this guy would be thinking. But It was a good book, though. I did like it. It was enjoyable read, and it was easy read, so that made it better.
So going back to what you said at the beginning, like,
yes,
I feel like it could have ended 70 pages earlier. Like everything that happened after he got back from the hurricane, which I want to talk about.
Okay, that's where I was gonna go to. Yeah,
like everything that happened after that was like letdown. Like it's all the denouement, but it shouldn't take up 25% of the book.
It felt like it was putting a ribbon on things that didn't need to have a ribbon on them, that shouldn't have.
So have you seen the movie Love Actually?
Oh man, it's been years, but yes.
So there's a scene where Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, is literally putting a ribbon on a present and taking forever, like putting in some sprinkles of glitter and all this other stuff. And that's what I felt like the last 20% of this book was. It's like tying it up, and just when you think he's done, he keeps tying it up. And just when you think, okay, finally it's ready, there's 25 more pages of like describing how Dick feels.
And I didn't want it to be tied up. His life was not going to get any easier. His life wasn't going to be better now that a few things have worked out. He was going to have another baby on the way at 42, 43 years old. And
a bastard child, by the way.
Yeah. Well, who maybe he wasn't even going to be claiming or might not have anything to do with. His life was not going to be easy from there on out, but the book kind of made it feel like everything was wrapping up nicely and just putting a little bow on it. But you said the hurricane and how much that bothered, or did it bother you as much as it bothered me?
Oh, no, I loved it. That was my favorite part of the whole book.
What? Okay. I felt like the hurricane was so forced. It was like there had to be something happening, so we're going to throw a hurricane in here. Which, okay, 2 books in a row now, we have hurricanes and drug dealing, mind you.
Oh, nautical drug dealing, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And I felt like the hurricane was forcing Dick into trying to be what he wanted to be. And I don't think it worked. I think it worked, but I felt like it wasn't the right way for Dick to kind of conquer what he was struggling with. And I did not like the hurricane coming in and messing everything up and him being able to power through when everybody else failed. Dick is not the kind of guy, or throughout the story, he was not the person who would be successful when everybody else got torn apart.
So I liked it because I don't see it the same way. Like, so I really did enjoy the metaphor of like the dark and stormy night along with the dark night of the soul, you know, where he's doing this real reckoning and thinking about how he is as a father and all this stuff. But like when you talk about everybody else, Captain Tashura, he just sailed off.
Yeah.
He sailed out of the risk. Like, so I think I thought the way that it balanced it, that other people had the means and the wherewithal to just avoid it altogether. Dick had to go through it.
Okay,
and I thought that really worked. Like, it was building and building and building to this point where he was going to have to go through something, and he did. And
okay.
I honestly didn't know that he was going to survive that.
And I mean, he did. He came out stronger because of the hurricane, and it forced him into doing what he wanted to do.
Right, and so, like, from my perspective, I really, that was the highlight of the book for me, where,
okay.
So the only way that he can survive and his livelihood, his new boat that he just put in the water, that he built by hand, what's basically the metaphor for his entire life, right?
Yes, yeah.
Built by him. The only way it can survive, and he can survive, is to go out and face the hurricane to the best of his ability. And maybe it's going to kill him.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I guess
it doesn't, and he makes it through.
I guess I just took it from a different perspective, and it felt a little forced to me, but I like your take on that. It works, and it makes sense.
Well, that's the awful thing about books, is everybody reads them themselves.
I know, and we all have different thoughts. Dang.
I know, we all have to interpret them. I
Why
just
can't
want the
everybody
Cliff's
think like
notes.
me?
Yeah, forget this. Just give me the notes so I can write an essay.
Oh, if only life was that easy. Yeah. Well, what'd you give this book? What kind of grade are we looking at for Spartina?
I gave it a B plus.
Hey, that's what I gave it too.
So
I
maybe
was-
we didn't like exactly the same parts of it, but yeah, I mean, it was definitely an enjoyable read.
Yeah, and it's definitely better than the Clear and Present Danger. I felt like it was more enjoyable, and it gave descriptions.
There was just more to chew on.
Yeah, it gave descriptions in a way that made you think about them instead of just being like, okay, that's what it is.
Right.
So
It wasn't somebody drew a diagram of a series of events. It was
yeah.
yeah. It was
So
an actual thing.
B plus. Yeah, I liked it. I would suggest reading it. It's a quick read. Read it couple hours a day or an hour a day, and you can get done with it pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I looked up the other finalists for the National Book Award.
I did too at one point. I
1989.
can't remember them now, but
So here they are. There's 5. The other
Okay.
4 were Billy Bathgate by E.L. Doctorow. Know nothing about it.
nothing.
Geek Love by Catherine Dunn.
Have you read that?
I have not, but
Okay.
I did look up the description. Geek does not mean what we use it as in the modern parlance of like kind of a
Oh.
tech-related person. It's like the old school circus sideshow definition of geek.
Okay.
So it sounds like actually a really interesting book.
That might
I might
be-
get to it. The third of the 4 was The Mambo Kings Play Songs of Love by Oscar Hijuelos. Which
Okay.
I think maybe they made a movie of it. It got the lowest rating on Goodreads
Okay, fair enough.
of those 4. And the 4th one is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, which I have read.
Oh, I've actually heard of that one. I haven't read it, but I know it exists.
I read it, I don't know, probably 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Like, it's
Okay.
like a sort of Asian immigrant woman coming of age story.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for immigrant coming of age stories. I honestly am. Like, The Amazing
I did not
Adventures
know
of
that about
Cavalier
you.
and Clay, Pachinko, The Joy Luck Club, The Good Earth's not really immigrant, but like, I am a sucker for those ones.
Well, I think we're going to get the opportunity to read a lot of interesting books over the course of however long this podcast lasts, and some of those books that you like might actually show up on our list at some point.
Yeah, I think so. I will say that if you look up the Goodreads scores, Spartina has the 4th highest out of 5. The highest, The Joy Luck Club, then Geek Love, then Billy Bathgate, then Spartina, and bringing up the rear is the Mambo Kings Sing Songs of Love. So
Okay.
take that for what you will. But none of them get more than 4 stars out of 5.
Okay. Well, but I can only judge what I know, and Spartina was good. Who knows if it should have won the award? I'm probably not gonna read those other books, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, and it's funny how like a book can win a major award and then just disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only found, so the library that I check out books from, it's connected. There's like 16 libraries in our area, all connected. So if you can get one book and they'll send it to your library from any of these other 16 libraries. There was only one copy of Spartina in all 16 libraries.
Wow.
So luckily I was able to get that and read it.
I think I ended up just buying it on Kindle because I didn't want to do that.
I like going. So I take my kids to the park on Fridays. There's a big meetup with a bunch of people, and so they go and play, and I take a lawn chair, sit down with my book, like a physical book. Something about having the book in my hands is nice, and so I just take it and read it, and it works out well for me.
Yeah, there is something to be said for a physical book. There's also something to be said for carrying as many books as you want in your hand on a Kindle, right?
Fair. I'm not above that.
Yeah, I tend to read while I'm traveling places whenever I travel, and the ability to do that with a tiny little 4-ounce device as
Yeah.
opposed to, so to get a little bit of preview for what we're doing next. So we've talked about 1989, and next on our list was the very first year
Yes.
of the Grammys, 1958. So that's as early as we can go. And the most popular book of the year was Dr. Zhivago. That thing's like a tome. That is a beast. So if I can have that on my Kindle as opposed to carrying it around, I'm all for it.
Yeah, this one's going to be an interesting read for sure.
So I've only like, I don't know, one chapter in.
That's about where I'm at. You love it so far?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, well, we'll see how that mutates over the next however long it takes us to read it.
Yeah, maybe I should have got the audiobook.
Yeah, we're not going to be above that on this podcast. If we have to listen to it, so be it.
So yeah, it's going to be weird. Like, next we're talking about a year that our parents probably barely remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we weren't around, and
right, yeah.
It'll be interesting to watch some of these movies. But I did look; they're almost all available for free online, so that's good.
Yeah, I've got 3 DVDs from the Arlington County Library.
Nice.
Checked out already. So yeah, so next episode we'll be talking about the most popular ones in 1958, right? So
yes.
The book is Dr. Zhivago. The movie is the classic Rodgers and Hammerstein musical South Pacific.
Yep.
Which I know I've seen, but it's been a long time.
I'm gonna have to. Yeah,
gonna have to rewatch that for sure.
And the album was the music of Peter Gunn, which is Henry Mancini from the show Peter Gunn.
Wait, that was the most popular album?
It was. Unless I read something wrong, it might. I could be wrong. But.
Yeah,
sure.
People in 1958 were weird.
Yeah.
I guess, like, that kind of predates the modern pop music era, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I've already listened to this album. I don't want to give anything away, but it's hard to compare it to modern music. That's just the way it is.
So we thought that the people voting for things in 1989 were old. Because, like rock music was a thing in the late 50s. It was just kind of, like, risky.
Yeah, it wasn't mainstream at all. Yeah. But that's for next time. So we will cover 1958, all the top grossing things, features, whatever you want to call them, on our first one. And then second episode, 1958, we'll look at those award winners, since that's the first year the Grammys existed. Or was it the Oscars?
The Grammys were the first. Yeah, the Oscars have been around since like 1930 or something.
Okay. So, yep. So that's where we're at, and that's what we have for 1989.
Yeah, and after 1958, I think we have one on the calendar, but if you have a year in mind, you can always feel free to reach out to us at whatwasgoodpod@gmail.com if you got a favorite year out there between now 59 and I think 2010 is our upper limit.
Yep, that's the range we're looking at.
So if you got a year that you're just really in love with, whether it's a book or a movie or music, feel free to send us an email. Reach out to us on Twitter at whatwasgoodpod. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you think, and if you like the podcast that we've done so far, let us know. Or if you have a year that you really are passionate about, and we'll try to not hurt your feelings too much, I guess.
And smash that like and subscribe button, and make sure to rate and review us on whatever podcast software you use to listen to it, or if you're just downloading this from the dark web, go outside and shout your review into the sky, and someone, I'm sure, will pick it up and record it.
Well, I'll keep my ears perked up for that one. Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, Zach, have a good one.
All right, Schuyler. Thanks again. We'll see you next time,
Bye.
everyone.